You're now listening to Self Inventory. I am your host, Brandon Chastang, aka B McFly. And yes, B McFly stands for being motivated comes from loving yourself. You must love yourself. If you love yourself and you get in tune with yourself, you're going to be motivated to do better. Top of the year, 2021. Wow. We made it. For those who didn't make it, again, I'm sending my condolences to those who didn't make it. My sincere condolences to everybody that didn't make it. But yes, B McFly. A lot of people wanted to know, how did B McFly start? Where did B McFly come from? Who is B McFly, right? And it's a long story. And I always tell people, right? So many people say, well, everybody got a story. I advise you to tell your story, right? Like, I advise you to let the world know who you are. How did this diamond come about, right? And not only that, your story can, help others. Because a lot of people, especially me as a child, right? I always thought that, nobody else is going through what I went through. Nobody has a story like me. And as I got older, I matured. And as I'm maturing, come to find out, there's people with a story worse than mine's. So Brandon Chastang comes from Philadelphia. West Philadelphia. My mother and my father, they had me at a young age. My mother was 14. My father was 16. Now we're talking about two young parents, and the odds are drug addiction, jail, death. Pretty much that's the odds, coming from an aggressive environment, right? And some of those things came true. My mother was addicted to drugs. My father was addicted to drugs. They were addicted to drugs for a very long time. I was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother raised me. She took me, 5 days after being born. She took me and, she started raising me. Growing up, like I said, I really didn't see my mother that much. I didn't see my father that much. I seen them. I was with them. I spent the night with them. But the overall growth of my young years was with my grandmother. My mother, they were addicted to drugs for a very long time. I think my mother got herself together in 1993. I think my father stopped using drugs and got himself together in 2000. I never understood my parents. I never really had a chance to grow with my parents. And as we go down, listening to this segment, as we get further into this story, you're going to see why I didn't understand my parents. My grandmother raised me with my two aunts, which is my mother's sisters. We were raised like brothers and sisters. We weren't raised like nephew and aunt. And my grandmother did what she had to do. My grandmother, she worked. Now, my grandfather was in the building as well. My grandfather and my grandmother are still together. And, he was the only man that I seen in my life. Growing up, it was more of survival than love. you know, I'm not used to seeing what love is. I'm not used to seeing what love feel. Or I'm not used to feeling love. And what I mean by that is not to say that my grandparents weren't in love, or, my grandmother and my grandfather, people didn't love me. But what I mean is, patience, understanding, aggression, survival tactics. That was love for me. And, it was a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, a lot of I got to do what I got to do to make this work. Those were the things that I've seen. And when I seen that, I'm like, okay, this appears to be normal. When my mother finally got herself together, I was in junior high school. My mother asked me, did I want to move with her? And I said, yeah. Because for 13 years of my life, my grandmother raised me, but I also lived in different places as well. But for those 13 years of my life, primarily it was my grandmother. And she did the best that she could do. And she was stern. She was straight to the point. Survival mode. When I moved with my mother in 93, my mother was selling drugs. And I didn't know that my mother sold drugs. And I'm just like, okay. I thought, now 13 years old, I thought that you're up here to stop using drugs. Come to find out, she did stop. She really did not get back on crack cocaine. But she essentially transferred that energy of using and started selling the drugs. Now, this is my mother, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, well, you know what? I just want to be with you. And I eventually started selling drugs for my mother. Things happened. She got, locked up, and things happened, or whatever the case may be. And then she met my stepfather at the time. We moved back to Philadelphia because this was the place when we were selling drugs, and when I was selling drugs for my mother, we were out Williamsport. And when we came back, now, mind you, I have a sister as well. So I have a biological sister. So me, my biological sister, and my mother, we came back to Philadelphia. She eventually, got off on a lot of charges, but had like 10 years of probation. And now we back to this life in Philadelphia. So from 93 to 2000 was the most time that I've ever spent with my mother consistently. So that's about 7 years. My mother didn't have a chance to grow mentally. I didn't have a chance to grow mentally. So it was a lot of problems. My mother has me about 14 years. It's a lot going on now that we're finally together. Yes, my mother did what she had to do, meaning that phrase, do what you have to do, is a serious phrase when you live in an aggressive environment. She worked. This was her first time ever having a job. This was her first time ever taking on full responsibilities. And the number one responsibility is raising 2 children. It was rough. A lot of arguing, a lot of going back and forth, a lot of miscommunication. It was rough. My father, now 2000 is when I graduated from high school. In those 7 years, my stepfather, my mother, and my stepfather eventually got married. And he became the man in my life. Now, bringing it back, my grandfather, which is not my biological grandfather, but he's been the man that's in my life. Had a lot of ups and downs with him as well. A lot of pain. And I'm going to get into that. But I'm just breaking down my parents. My stepfather and my mother were together, and he was the man that was teaching me how to be a man. He was the grown man teaching me how to be a man and eventually becoming a grown man. Because a man is only what separates a man and a grown man. A man is based off your age and your body structure and the things that you do physically. But a grown man is mental, right? A grown man does things the right way. A grown man takes care of his responsibilities. A grown man, step up to the plate and deal with, anything that he does wrong. He knows how to deal with that. That's a grown man. He know how to talk. He know how to rationalize. He know how to deal with pressure to a certain degree. At least that's what my stepfather was showing me. Now, 2000, I graduated from Overbrook High School. I eventually go to Lincoln University, which is a historical black college. It was the first, Lincoln University is the first black college to give out degrees. Cheney University was the first black college, but Lincoln University was the first black college to give out degrees. And they were both, I think, created the same year. I graduated from Lincoln University 2004. Now, again, my father was around, but he wasn't around. But I know who my father is. I know who he is. I love him. I care for him. I respect him regardless of what. The only thing that I'm thinking now is I'm really becoming a man, a grown man now. Like, I'm doing things that never been done. I am the only person to graduate from college and I'm not saying that to say I'm better than anybody, but this is the truth. This is the story. I am the only person to graduate from college on both sides of my parents' children, both sides of my grandparents' children. And I want to say, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say out of my great-grandparents' children as well, on my mother's side. So after I graduate from college with the degree of criminal justice, 2004, I have to go back into an aggressive environment, which is Philadelphia. And what's that, May, June, July, 2 months after I graduated from college, that's when my life began to be crazy. I actually got shot July 4th, 2004. Now, before me getting shot, I told you my parents were addicted to drugs. At the time, I didn't know I had an addictive personality until I got myself together. But I did drink. I smoked a little bit every now and then, but I did more drinking. I took e-pills my last year of college, but it wasn't to that magnitude. It wasn't something that when I was taking e-pills, it was just for sexual purposes or just to have fun. But when I got shot, I was in the hospital for a week, and I was taking morphine in a hospital. But then the doctors, when it was time for me to discharge, the doctors prescribed me a medicine called Percocets. And when I took the Percocets for the first time in 2004, after I was released from the doctors, that drug was the drug of my choice. And what I mean by that is that was the drug that I said fits me in my description of getting high, having fun. Now, not in the beginning because I was taking it as prescribed. So I didn't know that I was going to get addicted to it. The doctors never said, you know what, be careful with this drug because it's highly addictive. And when the first time that I ever took a Percocet, I said, well, why don't they sell this? Why don't they sell this behind the counter at Rite Aid or Walgreens or something? How do you not, like, this particular drug takes away everything. Any type of pain that you're going through, it takes away everything. And not knowing, I never even knew what a Percocet was. So from 2004 to about 2008, after taking Percocets as prescribed, I started to take Percocets for every other pain now. A toothache, I'm taking a Percocet. You know, I jammed my foot, I'm taking a Percocet. My back hurt, I'm taking a Percocet, right? But I eventually found out where to get Percocets from. And where I got my Percocets from was from my father. And again, at this time, I'm only taking Percocets for pain, but subconsciously, I'm taking Percocets to get high. Consciously, I'm thinking, well, you know, nah, Tylenol ain't gonna do it. No, give me a Percocet because I know a Percocet was the drug that Percocets was the drug that said, yo, it took away everything. And eventually, not only was it taking away the physical pain, Percocets was taking away the mental pain. And I didn't understand it. I couldn't grasp what I was doing. But all I know is that my father had the Percocets. And even between 2004 and 2008, I was still taking E-pills, but that was only during the weekends. Not knowing that these E-pills and any other drug that I took was eventually the gateway to my drug of choice. Now, some may say, well, if you wouldn't have never got shot, you probably wouldn't be addicted to Percocets. Well, the gateway drug would eventually lead me to Percocets or lead me to dope or something strong of that kind. So around 2008 is when I started to be around my father. My mother is still around, but guess what happened? My mother eventually got addicted to Percocets and Xannies. Now, I didn't know these things. I did not know, you know, she vowed that she would never get on. She vowed that she would never get back on crack cocaine. And she didn't. But my stepfather was a recovering addict as well. And my stepfather used to always say that, listen, you cannot handle drinking. You cannot handle smoking. You cannot handle taking pills because you're going to eventually go back to your drug of choice, or you're going to get addicted to this new drug of choice. I didn't know that my mother was addicted to pills until like 2008 as well. That's when 2008 was the year that I started to take drugs just to take them now. No more, oh, you're taking it for the pain. Yeah, no, I'm taking these Percocets now for recreational purposes. I'm not even taking e-pills anymore. Those are done. I would rather take Percocets. That's my drug of choice, and I'm sticking to it. And when I started taking these pills for recreational purposes, my life slowly went down. I am a true product of, I started out late. Normally, some people start off first doing things bad, and then it's like, oh, okay, and then they get themselves together. I started off late. It was like a flip flop. Now, when it comes to my father was married to my stepmother, and my father had other children, and my stepmother had children, and it was a lot of jealousy with me because I used to look at my father and say, well, you don't look at me and my sister, the way you don't treat me and my sister the way that you do my siblings and my step siblings. But at that time, now I don't even care because the drug Percocets was taking over me. I used to spend money to buy Percocets off my father. When I had it, I would spend $100 a day. And when I'm looking at my parents, I say, well, you guys were both on drugs. You guys both are from the streets. You guys both been, locked up and shot. When do we break the generational curse? But I had to realize, now I realize that they never had a chance to get help for their mental health. Just because they stopped using drugs, that doesn't mean that they didn't fix their mental health. So on one side, my mother had me selling drugs for her. And on the other side, I was buying Percocets off my father to get high with. So from 2008 to 2018, I did everything under the sun, or tried to do everything to get my drug of choice. I come from a background, my parents were drug addicts. I was a drug addict. The same way my parents neglected me, I neglected my children. The same way my father had multiple children by multiple women, I had multiple children by multiple women. The same pain that they went through, I went through. Being mentally abused, being physically abused. And now, when I was taking the drugs, like I said earlier, I was taking the drugs, the Percocets, not only for the physical pain, but for the mental pain. I didn't want to face the harsh reality that you don't take care of your kids, you are a womanizer, you don't care about nothing or nobody but you lost it all, And if I didn't take a pill, those things would have been running in my head over and over and over again. And I would have eventually said, you know what? Kill myself or go crazy. So I continued to use drugs for 10 years. I tried to stop, but guess what happened? I didn't understand what stopping meant. Some people think, well, because you stopped taking your drug of choice or you stopped taking drugs, you made it. No, you didn't make it. You have to understand why is this drug taking over you? Why do drugs take over a person? Why do drugs make you do things that you never in a million years thought that you would do? Why did you do that in order to get your drug of choice? In the process from 2000 to 2018, I had 4 children. Boy, girl, boy, girl. 3 co-parents. And what I mean by co-parents in layman's terms, 3 baby mothers. My son, my daughter, and my last 2. I destroyed them, when I say about destroy, I'm not going to say I destroyed them and now they went left. But in my eyesight, I destroyed them. And when I rebuilt and got myself back together, that's when things started to get back together with my children. Out of all of my children, my oldest daughter felt it the worst. Because it was times that I didn't even talk to her for years. And my girlfriend, Aoshin Clark, which the woman that birthed my last 2 children, she was there. She is the reason that I am clean today. She never gave up on me. This woman kept fighting and fighting and fighting. No matter if I stole something, no matter what I did, she never gave up. I hurt a lot of women along the way. I hurt a lot of people. I did damage to my community. I did damage to myself. And I suffered for it. I suffered for the pain that I've caused. My last go around was 2018. And when I tell you this was my last go around, this was my last go around. 2018, January the 21st is my clean date. That was the day that I entered rehab, inpatient. Big shout out to Arms Acres, New York, upstate New York, man. Shout out to Arms Acres because they gave me the tools not to ever get high again. I wanted to kill myself. I didn't have the courage to get a gun, and I didn't have the courage to get a gun and put it to my head. I didn't have the courage to use a knife or razor and slice my wrist. I didn't have enough courage to just find a roof and jump off of it. So what I said was, God, don't wake me up. Let me get as high as possible so I don't have to wake up, and let me have a peaceful death. Because I'm no good. I am no good to my community. I am no good to my children. I am no good to me. So let me just take these drugs and die. God, don't wake me up in the morning because I got to start all over again. But I kept getting chances after chances after chances. And I eventually just went into rehab. And when I was in rehab, I served 30 days in rehab. And I don't mean to say it like it was jail or something like that. And once I did my time, I learned. I learned that it was people in there. This disease of drug addiction, the disease of drug addiction don't care about how much money you got, don't care about the color, they don't care about your race, your money, your culture. The disease of addiction does not care about you. It doesn't care. The only thing it cares about is just controlling you. And when I was in there, I realized it was just the equal amount of people were addicted to drugs. Black people, white people, Asian people, Spanish people. It doesn't matter. I had to face humiliation. And that was the hardest part. That was the hardest part, facing humiliation. And it took me about 2 weeks. I heard them coyotes. Listen, when I first went to rehab, right, I heard the coyotes, and I'm like, yo, where these dogs coming from? They was like, yo, the counselor was like, dogs? Those are coyotes. What? So you could go ahead and leave if you want to. You're a grown-ass man. Leave. But this ain't no, we calling a cab for you. This ain't no, we're gonna have a flashlight and we're gonna walk you to the bus stop so you can catch a bus and take your ass back to Queens. No. You wanna go out there with the coyotes when they screaming and hey, there they found food. And if you wanna be food, go out there. So I said, well, let me keep my ass in, man. I think it's a little bit more safe. Oh, and you told me is what kind of cats out there? Them little skinny, tall cats? Oh, no, I don't want no parts of that. I don't want no parts of that. So shout out to the animals. They was a big reason why I stayed my ass in Arms Acres as well, right? And my second week in Arms Acres, I decided that when I come home, I am going to be the top motivator in the world and the sober messenger. I am going to be as transparent as possible. And with my transparency and who I am going to save the world. Because a person may say, how are you the top motivator in the world? And I said, well, it's more people that's addicted to drugs than it is people that's sober. You could be a functional addict. You can be a crazy addict. You just want it every day. But I can assure you, it's more people taking something to not face the harsh reality than it is people that are sober. And I'm talking about, yes, you have people that say, well, you know what, I only do a drink, every other. No, I'm not talking about people like that. I'm talking about people that have to use some type of drug to get up in the morning. People that have to use some type of drug to get through their workday. People that have to use some type of drug to take the stress off after your day. Those are the people that I'm talking to. A person that's functional and saying, well, you know what? I got the money to pay for it. Okay, you're still addicted. What's drugs to me? Well, if you have to smoke a cigarette every day, that's a drug to me. Alcohol, I had to tell somebody, alcohol is the worst drug of all drugs. Well, why, B McFly? Well, it's the easy, you can get alcohol every day, legally. And if you ever been in those rooms, A person coming down from being addicted to alcohol, whew, you can die from alcohol addiction. You can die from any addiction, but alcohol is the top killer. So when I came home, I did my first skit. I said, I am going to reenact skits. I'm going to reenact real life scenarios and I'm going to put them on Instagram. And that's what I did. And my first skit, my kids laughed at me. Everybody laughed at me. I said, okay, watch this. And my first skit went viral. Shout out to Bugsy. Bugsy from Southwest. He reposted that skit. And and then from his repost, it just started to take off. So you got to give flowers to people that helped you. And there's a lot of flowers I got to give to. But that skit, when I did that jail skit, yo, what's up, gangster? I was in the bathroom and I made it. I took some old bar off the window, had it sitting up, and yo, what's up, gangster? You want to be a gangster? Well, this is where gangsters live at. And everybody thought I was in jail. I said, yo, I got him. I started doing skits based off of my life, talking about me as a father, as a person, being kicked out of houses with one bag, and my son looking for me out on the corner, and I just started doing skits so people can see, because the eye can't see itself. So if you see this skit, it's like, yo, it touched so many emotions. Like, yo, he talking about me. And with the skits, I'm motivating. You got to get up. You got to take care of you. So I was speaking on elements, right? Drug addiction, right? I was speaking on gun violence, speaking on education, speaking on mental health, and more importantly, speaking on rehabilitating an absent father. Whoa. Through it all, you still got to do what you got to do for your children. Regardless of what, once you get your mental, you got to get you together first and foremost. And then once you get yourself together, now you have to rehabilitate yourself with your children. You got to tell them you were wrong. You have to be patient, have to be understanding. You have to go through the things that you got to go through in order to get your children back. And I had to do that as well. And the hardest part was with my daughter. And now, 3 years clean. January the 21st, 2021, made it 3 years clean with over 130,000 followers on social media, 80,000 or more on Instagram, 50-something thousand or more on TikTok, with over 20, 30 million views of content. Celebrities following me, like Damian Lillard. Man, when they told me Dame reposted my video, I said, no way. Then when somebody wrote something, something under my post and was like, yo, you made it when Steph Curry followed you. I'm like, what the hell is he talking? Follow back. Whoa! A bunch of celebrities follow. You got people all over the world saying, yo, you are motivated. Yo, I need help with drug addiction. Can you help me? Can you talk to me? Can you be there for me? Yo, where did all this come from? Where did you get all this motivation from? How did you do it? Yo, I love what you're doing, your content, everything, all over the world, man. You couldn't have told me 3 years ago I would be in this position. You could not have told me 3 years ago that this would work. I was just begging for $20. I was just lying, manipulating, using. I was just doing everything, hoping that I would die so I don't have to make it to see 2021. You can't tell me that this was going to happen. And this why self-inventory is created. when you when you come to an understanding of self-inventory. Had to do a self-inventory. And this is why we here today. Because this is why this podcast is called Self-Inventory. Coming from my perspective and what I've been through. And being open to everyone else's perspectives. The mama mentality. Rest well, King. Rest well to my mother. She died in 2015. Rest well to my father. He died 2020. Rest well to my stepfather. He died 2014. Rest well to my stepmother. She died 2020. I have a best friend that's fighting cancer. He's fighting. And I have a best friend that's doing life in prison. I gotta take the role. Pain is either gonna make you stronger or it's gonna make you weaker. I've been weakened long enough. Figure out who you are as a person. Do a self-inventory on yourself. Start that part over. Figure out who you are as a person and do a self-inventory. My name is B McFly, the top motivator in the world, and your sober messenger. Let's go.